You're listening to Beyond Wellness Radio, bringing you the cutting edge in health, nutrition, and sports performance. Stay up to date and listen anywhere, anytime on your computer, tablet, or smartphone by subscribing on iTunes. Catch your hosts, Dr. Justin Marchegiani and Barris Harvey, as they answer your burning health questions as well as interviews from world-renowned guest experts. For more Beyond Wellness Radio, go to beyondwellnessradio.com.
Thank you guys for listening to another episode of Beyond Wellness Radio. Today's episode is about the calorie myth. There's been a lot in the media and over the past couple of decades actually about counting calories, and to be able to reduce your weight, and for weight loss especially, we must make sure that we count our calories, exercise more, and run less. At least that's what we're taught. In today's episode, we're going to talk about what is important with calories and what isn't. So, first of all, how's it going today, Dr. Justin?
I'm doing great, Barris. How are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome. So, one of the first questions I have is, why is counting calories so ineffective?
Well, first things first, we have to go over what is a calorie, because a lot of people just aren't quite 100% aware of what that is. Essentially, a calorie is nothing more than a measurement of heat. Technically, it's the amount of energy it takes to heat 1 gram of water 1 degree Celsius. So it doesn't really talk about how calories affect our metabolism, hormones. Doesn't really talk about whether or not those calories are attached to nutrients, whether they're just attached to refined sugar. So there's a lot of things the calories leave out. But what it's giving us is an idea of energy. So outside of that, the only time I find calories useful is when people that are eating healthy, that are eating the right proportions of their food, macronutrient-wise, right? Protein, fat, carbohydrate. They're eating nutrient-dense, they're eating anti-inflammatory and low-toxin food. But if they're not eating enough of it, that's where calories are a good measure of, all right, are you taking enough in? Because you can kind of look and you can say, well, you're this size, you should be taking in at least, let's say, 22 to 2,500 calories for maybe a 130 or 140-pound female who's slightly active. So you can kind of gauge that, and if you see, well, you're taking in 1,500 calories, well, you know you're just not eating enough. So that's where calories are beneficial. That answer your question?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so you're saying the only times you really see its importance is probably a female who's under eating, or maybe an athlete who wants to put weight on. He might have to make sure that he's eating in excess, correct?
Yeah, so with athletes and people that are at a higher level, looking at protein grams are really helpful. So typical recommendation for protein is going to be between 0.5 to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. And that's for like your everyday kind of person. Like if you're a CrossFitter and you're 200 pounds, then you should be having about 200 grams of protein. If you're somewhat sedentary and you're 200 pounds, well, 0.5 grams per pound, that'd be about 100 grams of protein. And if you're a female who's 100 pounds, just trying to use even numbers, 100 grams of protein would be that 1 pound per gram of body weight, and then 50 grams would be at the lower end. But now if you're at a higher level, I'd even go up to 2 grams per pound. People like Charles Poliquin recommend up to 2 grams per pound, 2 grams of protein per pound of body weight to really make sure you have that fuel. And we know protein is attached to calories, right? Protein, 4 calories per gram of protein. So we kind of know there is some calories attached to that. But remember, protein, for the most part, unless you're doing isolated protein powder, or you're eating, like super lean chicken or like rabbit meat, so to speak, you're going to be getting some fat in with that protein. And ideally, you'll be cooking that protein in some fat, whether it's in a frying pan with coconut oil, whether you're baking it, whether you're using bacon fat or ghee or grass-fed butter. Typically, there's going to be some fat in with that meat as well.
Yeah, we've already within a couple minutes covered some great points, but I think we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. I think one thing we might have some naysayers say is, well, isn't a calorie a calorie? What about the laws of thermodynamics, right? Don't they explain that, energy cannot be created nor destroyed? So if you eat more, you're going to gain weight, and if you eat less, you're going to gain weight. So what about those who say a calorie is just a calorie?
So in regards to that question, the main point being made is, well, eating too many calories are causing us to get overweight. And to a certain degree, that is true. But it's like me saying, well, if you're an alcoholic, the reason why you're an alcoholic is because you're drinking too much alcohol than what your liver can metabolize. It's like, well, we know that. It's kind of already assumed, right? It's like if I'm giving a really, good lecture and a lot of people are attending, it's like someone saying, well, the reason why your lecture was so packed was because more people came in than left the lecture. It's like, well, of course,
why?
duh. Like,
Right.
but why? It's like, well, was it because I gave a really good talk and people were, really captivated and loved the information? Or was it because it was raining outside and people had nowhere else to go? So there's no causal relationship to why the calories are being increased. It's just telling you an effect. And when I kind of draw that analogy with, the alcoholic, or with, me giving a lecture, or, with a restaurant, right? People going to a restaurant. Why are they there? Is it because the food's great, or is it because it's raining outside? What's the causal relationship? And a lot of times hormones are a huge part of that causal relationship.
Mm-hmm. So it's almost like people just assume everybody who's overweight is just eating excess because they want to. But there's a lot of people that are actually trying to lose weight, and they're cognizant of how many calories they're eating and they're trying to reduce it, but it's not helping. So the assumption is, well, if you're overweight, you're just lazy and you don't have discipline, which isn't always the case.
Yeah, absolutely. It really comes down to hormones, in my opinion, with calories. Because calories, when you look at calories by themselves, you're not looking at the effect that calories have over hormones, and you're also not looking at, well, what nutrients are now attached to those calories. Are we talking about calories that contain a whole bunch of, B vitamins and fat-soluble nutrients and micronutrients and such, or are we talking about empty calories? So you kind of mentioned hormones, for instance. Well, we know certain children, for instance, Dr. Robert Lustig, he's a pediatric endocrinologist over at UCSF School of Medicine. He's lectured on kids that are very overweight with these rare brain tumors, that they have a very difficult time managing their insulin response. Essentially, they're hyper-secreting insulin. So what's happening is their metabolism is such in a storing or fat storing mode and not a muscle burning mode or a higher metabolism mode, that they feel so fatigued. So when calories come into their body, the hormones that partition those calories, meaning that say go to your muscles for energy or go to your fat cells for storage, they're in such a place hormonally where their body is basically telling them store, which is saying rest, be tired, so they're playing video games or on the couch all day. And what he's found in some of his research, they'll give a medication called octreotide, which basically knocks down that insulin response. And then now that when the calories come in, these kids are more apt to want to go do something with those calories and not sit on the couch, because the body is now partitioning calories in a way where we're burning the calories up and not storing them.
Yeah. It's funny that you say that, that there's actually a hormonal response, because an idea that came to me is, if somebody went to the doctors and maybe they're 13 years old, but they're excessively overweight and can be considered obese, the doctor would just look at the parents and say, well, you got to put this kid on a diet. He just eats too much. He's lazy. But if a kid was 13 years old and 7 feet tall, he must have, was it just he ate too much and he just grew vertically? No, they'll probably say, well, he might have a pituitary problem where he's just releasing too much growth hormone and just grew way too tall. But it's kind of disconnected. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, essentially. So like if you're a child and you're going through puberty, or if you're a 2 or 3 year old, infant and going through those, growing pains, if you will, you don't ever have to talk to the child and, have a pep talk and say, hey kid, we need you to grow. We need you to get out of those diapers and progress into your big kid clothes. We need you to really up your calorie.
Yeah, you got to eat more.
You got to eat more.
Taller, right?
Yeah, I really need you to focus on really extra protein today. You don't have to do that, because there are hormone signals going on in the body. We have the pituitary producing growth hormone. We have increases in testosterone, maybe not at that young of an age, but we have some hormonal fluxes going on that's telling those calories where to go, right? Those hormonal signals are saying, go make more bone, go lay down more muscle, go lay down more skin, more cartilage and such. So the hormones are telling the calories where to go. The calories are not telling, the calories aren't in charge of it by itself. The calories are basically followed by the hormones. And we know that if we lay out food, if I gave you a plate of 100 grams of glucose and a plate of 100 grams of protein and a plate of 100 grams of fat, each one of those macronutrients is going to cause a certain hormone response. The carbs, so the sugar, is going to create more insulin. The fat may increase cholecystokinin and a couple other satiating hormones, and the protein's going to increase maybe more glucagon and peptide YY and such. So the fat and protein are making more hormones that are causing us to feel satiated, while the carbohydrates are increasing hormones that are, one, shunting those calories to our muscle, or two, if we're in a place where our muscles are already full, it's going to shunt it towards our liver and our fat cells for storage.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because I notice if I take a bag of chips or popcorn per se, I can eat the whole thing and not feel full at all and receive a whole lot of calories. Whereas I can try to eat a whole block of butter and it's not going to happen. Like after a while, my body's going to say, okay, you've had enough.
Exactly. You get these satiating hormones. We have a part in the brain called the transverse lateral nucleus. It's the apostat, if you will. It's the part of the brain that tells you when you're full. And we have these hormonal neurochemical responses. I already mentioned a few of them, but peptide YY, adiponectin, cholecystokinin, leptin, ghrelin, all of these kind of control our appetite, and they tell us when we're full. They tell us when we're hungry. And certain foods, primarily the proteins and fats and foods that are nutrient dense, are going to give us those satiating signals that we need. Let's face it, when we get up in the middle of the night, typically we're reaching for the potato chips and the Haagen-Dazs or some other type of refined carbohydrate, pizza, if you will. We're very rarely waking up being like, wow, I'm really craving a steak and some asparagus, or some zucchini and some kale chips. Right? We're not really craving those things. We're craving the other things.
It's usually the things in the freezer, right? You wake up in the middle of the night. What's in the freezer, right? Because that's where you have the ice cream.
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
Or the frozen pizza, or even some sugary cereal as well.
Yeah, exactly. That makes a lot of sense. One thing I remember when I was a personal trainer at one of these bigger gyms, was our fitness instructor or the head trainer teaching us how we're supposed to talk to our clients and how we're supposed to tell them, if they need to get on the treadmill for at least 30 minutes before they work out, so that way they can burn more calories, and they have to, come to the gym 4 times a week, so that way they can have a calorie deficit. Could we just work off these extra calories by exercising?
Another great question. I get that question a lot from patients. And it's the ultimate way to make people feel like victims, because it's virtually impossible. You have someone that consumes 1 Big Mac, great. You have to run a marathon now to burn that off. I mean, imagine living your life that way. Well, if I have this one cheat, I have to run a marathon to burn those calories off. It's virtually impossible. And that's why you have people that get so discouraged, because they realize, wow, I need to work out like I'm on The Biggest Loser. I need to work out, 4 to 6 hours a day, right? And you get a lot of these Biggest Loser people, about 50 to 75%, gain the weight back, because they keep their weight the way it is by working out insane amounts of hours. And that message trickles down to the general public. They have to work out so long just to maintain that calorie deficit. And it's not true, because it's not looking at your hormones increasing and how your hormones actually burn extra calories while you're doing nothing. Research shows that 30 minutes of high intensity interval training or burst training is going to increase your metabolism 20+% over the next 2 days. So how many calories are you going to burn just through that increased metabolism through the hormone impulse of that type of burst training? So it's never the calories that we're burning during the exercise that causes the benefit. It's the hormonal output from that exercise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. If somebody was injected with testosterone and steroids, even if they didn't do anything, they would probably, start to see noticeable difference without necessarily exercising. A good example I like to point out is if you ate, a habanero pepper, you would notice your metabolism might increase, or you'll just start sweating, and it's not because you started running, but it's because of a chemical reaction, not just a mathematical equation of moving more. So back to the exercise, I notice even with the long duration kind of exercise, the cardio, when I was younger in high school and started putting on some weight, I would start to work out more, so that way I can, somehow lose this extra pounds. But every time I went and did an hour of running, what would happen, I would get these cravings, and right at the gym that I went to was in the mall, and I would say, hey, well, there's some food right here. I'll just go eat some Chinese food because I'm starving now. And it's the same reaction when if I go swimming for a long time, there's also your body temperature goes down, but because you're using all those muscles, you become really hungry. Have you noticed this with other people?
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea is working up an appetite, right? Think about it. You got a really, big date tonight. You're going to an awesome restaurant. You're excited. You really can't wait for their food. So what do? Well, you go exercise that day. Maybe you don't have, a big lunch, right? Because you want to work up an appetite. I know every Thanksgiving I'll intermittent fast throughout the morning, so late in the afternoon I have a really big meal and my appetite's ready for it. So it's that whole idea of working up an appetite. And kind of transitioning back to your last question, most people in the food industry love the idea of calories because it gives you the ability to then negate something, right? You can have this junk food as long as you do this, right? You can eat this as long as you watch your calories, tomorrow or later in the day. So it gives you the ability to kind of like bargain and negotiate so you can still eat the bad food. The reason why is if they ever looked at food with the perspective of, okay, what type of hormone response are we getting? What type of nutrients are in that food? Is that food inflammatory or not? And if you look at it from that perspective, well, you'd never buy the food. So if you look at it from the calories perspective, you can always negotiate your way around it and say, well, I'm just going to do an extra little bit of cardio tonight. I'm going to buy that junk food. But if you look at it from the perspective of hormones, well, there's just no way around it. That food's basically a hormonal toxin, if you will. So if you have the perspective that kind of we're talking about tonight, you're not going to fall prey to the calorie myth. And also food companies love it because they can actually give you less food and charge you more. I mean, case in point, 100-calorie snack packs. They cost more, than, most other foods, but because they're a health food, they can label it specifically and make health claims and market it because the whole calorie myth is so out in the mainstream that they can make more money off of giving you less food.
Yeah, exactly. And one thing that we hear a lot is food is always put as fuel, right? This is what we analyze it as, and we look at it just as fuel. And I think that's just a little bit too simple. And food is fuel. We do need a certain amount of fuel, but it's important to look at it as not only fuel, but also the antioxidants, the nourishment, they're more of a communication to our bodies, right? They're actually sending signals and telling our body certain things to do versus just put in excess amount of whatever, right? I'm pretty sure you can eat cardboard and there's some calories in there and there's fiber, but it's not food.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of funny because if you read the book by Paul Stitt called Beating the Food Giants, they did a study where they gave rats 3 different things. They gave them the cereal, they gave them nothing, and they gave them the actual cereal box to eat. And the rats that ate the cereal box actually lived longer than the rats that ate nothing, and the rats that ate the cereal died the first. So the rats actually had better quality life and a longer life actually eating the cereal box rather than eating the cereal itself.
So basically, the box that your cereal comes in is better than the cereal itself.
Yeah, according to that one study, yeah. I mean,
okay.
Maybe today with more chemicals and stuff, that's not the same, but that's a nice anecdote to resonate with there.
Yeah, definitely. It's really important that we notice that and that there's that chemical reaction versus just calories, because people they'll still find a way to justify eating bad foods. Not that we should never enjoy cheesecake or we should never have these indulgences because you only live one time, but to do it so often is quite funny. One thing that I want to talk about is moderation. I hear this thrown around a lot, and I'm not against, like I said, I like cheesecake. I don't eat it every day, but what about this idea of moderation, right? As long as we just eat a little bit.
Yeah, so with certain people, I deal with a lot of patients who are sick, who are very autoimmune, and moderation may not be the same for them. Like moderation for them, like their cheat may be a sweet potato with some grass-fed butter once they're feeling a little better.
Mm-hmm.
And that may be their cheat, because eating foods that are so inflammatory and so nutrient poor and high in toxins will throw them off, and they just feel so bad, where that little bit um, extra benefit that they get from that, the high palatability food, that nice sweet tooth sensation they get, isn't worth how they feel afterwards. Like myself, I have an autoimmune thyroid condition that I manage, and it does not express itself when I eat well and take care of myself. So me cheating and eating pizza isn't worth it. I'll much rather go and have a sweet potato with some grass-fed butter, or I'll go over to Whole Foods and I'll try to get a nice gluten-free pizza if I'm really going to cheat. There's degrees of cheat. So if you look at the spectrum of cheating, right, there's one side where it's like McDonald's and junk food and lots of gluten and lots of refined flour and carbohydrates. And there's other sides where you can do maybe gluten-free options. I'm still not a fan of that. It's still cheating in my book. Sweet potato, right? Maybe some French fries at In-N-Out that aren't, exposed to gluten and GMO soy. So there's lots of different options you can do in that cheat spectrum. The sicker you are, the healthier cheat you need to be doing, if not any cheat. And the healthier you are, you may be able to get away with it. It just depends where you're at and how do you feel afterwards. If you feel like crap, well, hey, go back to the drawing board and try a little bit more of a healthier cheat, and see if you still get that good mouth sensation and that, that really good vibe, that good sweet tooth vibe. And if you feel good, well, maybe you just have to choose a little bit of a healthier cheat on that cheat scale spectrum.
Dr. Justin, do you suffer from orthorexia?
Yeah, orthorexia is just the new classification that you're really, you're obsessively healthy. And I think it just comes down to the point where, how good do you want to feel? How used to you, I'm trying to say it another way here. I am so accustomed to feeling great where I don't want to feel any other way.
Yeah.
And the benefit that I get from feeling great overcomes the short-term satisfaction that I get from eating a meal. So I will cheat. I just cheat using that spectrum. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how I do it. Like, I'll do the Hail Mary coconut macaroons at Whole Foods that are grain-free, a little bit of sugar in there, but you're getting some good fats and some good proteins. I'll do that as my cheat. I'll get some, maybe a couple of, they taste really good. The strawberry flavor is great. I'll do maybe a couple of the mango chips. I'll cut up a sweet potato and I'll steam it with some grass-fed butter and some cinnamon on top. I'll get maybe the So Delicious coconut ice cream with sweetened with stevia instead of agave syrup. So those are some great ways where I don't feel like I'm missing out. And just the fact that I'm not gassy and bloaty and my skin's breaking out is even a better plus. And that's the reason why I choose some of those safer cheats than the cheats that are going to cause the other symptoms I just mentioned.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, it's all in a spectrum. If you go to the point where you're stressing your body out over the benefits of the food, then you might, have a little orthorexia, but it's a level, and it's something that you feel fine with. It's not hurting you by going a little bit an extra mile to make sure that you feel as good as you can feel, and you're not depriving yourself of really good tasting foods as well.
Yeah, and the whole idea that you have to cheat to enjoy great tasting foods is a little bit of a misnomer. Like, I had last night a great ribeye with grass-fed butter, good sea salt, and broccoli, and I just felt like I was in heaven. So the whole idea, like, that you need to cheat to experience something is a little bit off too, because you can still eat really good food. Just get a little creative with some spices. Get a couple of these really good cookbooks that are out there, like Balanced Bites or Rob Wolf's cookbook or Sarah Fragoso's. There's a lot of good ones out there that have some awesome recipes. Paleo Comfort Foods is another great one. I did coconut pancakes over the weekend. I did coconut flour, some eggs, and coconut flour, eggs, and some coconut milk, and then a little bit of grass-fed butter on top with a small amount of gravy maple syrup. It's organic, and it was like I was in heaven. I'm like, man, I don't even feel the need to have real pancakes with the refined flour, and plus I wasn't gassy or bloated afterwards.
Yeah, and it's funny that you say that. I have almost 2,000 people that follow my Really Healthy Now Instagram account, and it's mostly just me taking pictures of my food, and people were saying, oh, that looks so delicious, it tastes good. And I actually enjoy cooking and enjoy the process, and that's part of it. And when you go take a bite into that food, it's like, yes, I put this together and it tastes amazing. So I don't feel like I'm sacrificing much by not getting Oreos. In fact, a lot of times when you eat this way, you can kind of taste the difference and notice like this food actually tastes a lot better.
Yeah, exactly. Like Justin's, not Dr. Justin myself, but Justin's has a brand in Whole Foods now that I like because they have some really good some candies and chocolate stuff that are dark chocolate, that are GMO free, that are organic, and that are gluten free, that are a great substitute. So if you want a Snickers or a Reese's peanut butter cup, and that's going to be like your cheat, that's a great way to do it because you're not putting all the inflammatory foods in there. Yes, there is sugar, so you kind of have to look at your body and your health and kind of see where you're at in that spectrum. If you're autoimmune or celiac or sick, probably not. But if you're healthy, that could be like your 10 or 20% day, if you will. And you just choose the healthier option. It's like, why do you have to choose the Snickers? Like, you could choose the healthier option. But the food industry loves to, use that word moderation because it basically gives you the hook to say, well, you should be cheating. You should be eating this junk food. It's your right. And you can, but there are healthier options out there, and just be aware of it. Eat the bad option, see how you feel. Eat the healthier option of it, see how you feel. And what you'll find is you don't really feel like you're not really missing out that much, and you feel better afterwards.
Oh yeah, definitely. And to me personally, the Justin's, like the Reese's peanut butter cup kind of thing they have, to me it tastes better. So that's just my humble opinion on things.
And I want to just answer one thing. You made a comment earlier about like food kind of building up your body. So I think most people are kind of fed with the concept that your body's like a car, right? So think about it. You put gas in your car, and the gas is kind of like calories, and it gives you fuel to do what you're doing throughout the day. There's one problem with that analogy, is the gasoline does not become the building blocks for the bumper or the carburetor or the engine or the interior. So what I'm saying is your car isn't in a steady state of building up and breaking down and turning over cells. We know in our body that every 7 years we're a new person at a cellular level. Every 7 to 9 months we're creating new bones. Every 2 or 3 years we're creating new organs because our tissue is turning over, and it's turning over with the nutrients and the calories and the food that's coming into our body. So the real analogy of equating us to a car would be the car running off of the gas, but also the gas providing raw material for the car to rebuild itself. And with us, that's the case. So quality is super important. If you look at calories, it's easy to just to look at yourself as like a car. But when you look at the nutrient levels and the hormonal response, then you can start saying, wow, I need to be responsible because my body will break down faster than I build up, and I'm going to have all kinds of aches and pains and hormone issues and symptoms. And that's a sign of your body breaking down faster than you're building up. And that's why putting the right foods in, the foods that are anti-inflammatory, nutrient-dense, and low in toxins, are going to allow your body, one, to build up faster than it breaks down, but also allow you to perform at the highest level possible.
Yeah, if you looked at your body that way, there's going to be much more to the car than just you can look at the calories as the gas, but then also, what kind of fats are you getting? That could be the oils that you would put in your car. And what about the proteins that you're getting? That can be some of the building blocks. What about the antioxidants that, you're reducing? So there's a lot more to it. But if we go back and just look at the calories, for an example, I guess this would be something I would tell somebody who might be under eating, or even the idea of it. We want to eat less food and start moving more in order to lose weight. But I always tell them, well, if you only put, $5 of gas in your car, do you think you're going to drive all the way to LA? Like your body does the same thing. You only eat so much, it's going to regulate itself and say, hey, well, I don't want to go anywhere, right? I don't want to move because I don't have enough food. We're in a famine, so let me reserve as much energy as possible. And we mentioned earlier how you and myself have a lot of this in our own practice, where we have people that might be eating nutrient dense, but that's where the calories might matter.
The ratio is just, they're not eating enough of that good ratio.
So when it comes to people transitioning from McDonald's to maybe more whole foods kind of diet, what is some tactics that they can use? Because I know if you're eating a McDonald's cheeseburger, you're probably getting a lot of calories in that one meal. So all of a sudden you start eating healthier and you're eating good foods, but you might reduce your calories by a lot without really noticing. What are some things that people can do about it?
So one of the first things is just be mindful. Do a food diary. I've looked at thousands of food diaries over my career, and it's really important because, one, it creates awareness for the person. A lot of times people aren't aware over what they're eating until they write it down. And they look at it and they're like, wow, I really only ate about 200 calories for breakfast and about 10 grams of protein. Like, that's just not enough for my day. And then no wonder why I have sweet cravings and crash at lunchtime. So that creates awareness. It also creates accountability for me because I can be on them and I can see exactly what they're doing. So I find a lot of people, they do their best. They can try to, do a food diary for themselves, take a look at it, get a couple of these good books on the market, these paleo books. But I find working with a practitioner can be helpful because you get that extra bit of perspective. You get, condensed experience from thousands of people when you work with someone like us to get that food diary refined, and it kind of helps supercharge your results because you have yourself doing it, and then you also have someone else looking at it and making minor tweaks in that realm. And I find a lot of people who are paleo, they still kind of go low fat. They'll be eating the chicken breast with the broccoli, and they'll have the lean salmon with, a salad. And a lot of times there's just a little bit fat deficient, especially some of these healthy saturated fats. So it takes that little bit of extra eye to catch those things because that can create that sweet craving, blood sugar kind of cycle later on in the day. And you'll think, well, eating paleo or eating this paleo type of diet doesn't work. And a lot of times, there's just a couple of tweaks that can really make a big difference.
Yeah, and eating a certain amount of fats is an easy way to add calories into your diet to feel satiated, to want to move, to keep your body burning at a higher level. So, eating the skin on the chicken or making sure that you're putting oil or some extra virgin olive oil onto your salad so that way there's actually something there to satiate you. I notice this with the young athletes that I work with. A lot of them are like, oh, I eat a lot. Or their parents will say like, oh, this kid eats a lot. But they usually skip breakfast or they eat some Cheerios or Pop-Tarts. And they might even skip lunch at school. They might eat a lot of snacks. And then they come home and they eat a whole pizza. Oh, my goodness, they eat a whole pizza. But they didn't eat anything throughout the whole day. So they only really ate like 1,500 calories. And a lot of times like, oh, we eat a lot. And they're wondering why they can't put on muscle mass, and it's like you really don't eat that much. So I think that's what you said is important, maybe sometimes working with a practitioner in order to have that extra eye actually helping and guiding you, and so that way you don't fall into any pitfalls or any speed bumps along the way. Something to help guide you.
Yeah, the way I look at it's really simple. If you're feeling good, you're looking good, and you're performing good, and you're applying this information, great, kudos. If you're not feeling good, you're not looking good, and you're not performing good, and you feel like you're applying this info, that's where it's great to get another set of eyes looking at it.
Definitely. Some of the points that we went over today that I think would be great to summarize is, and I guess an analogy that came to my head was about regulating our food, and it's good, to take a diary at first so that way we can see what we're eating. But if we're eating a whole foods kind of diet, as long as we're eating enough, we probably don't have to count calories. It's almost impossible. The same way, if I had to count how many breaths I had to take, how many breaths in versus out, it'd drive me crazy, right? So I think that's important to note. If we're eating the right foods, then you might double check the calories, get yourself balanced after looking at it for a week, and then just be cognizant and you'll learn, okay, I need to eat more. Go to satiation. You might have to, your first time switching over, eat a little bit in excess because you're so used to eating these high calories, empty foods. Now you're eating these nutrient dense foods, but you're just not eating enough. So maybe starting off when you do the transition, making sure you eat a little bit more than you're used to until you find that right balance.
I totally agree. And I think we're going to look back a couple decades from now, and we're going to see this whole calorie myth, this whole calorie paradigm is like the paradigm in the 14th, 15th, 16th century of the earth being flat, right? It made so much sense. Hey, the earth is flat. It can't be circular because the people on the bottom would fall off, right? So it made sense. But then as we evolved, interject the law of gravity. Oh, now it makes sense. Now it's possible for people on the bottom of the earth to stay on the earth and not fall off. So now that paradigm of the earth being flat falls by the wayside because we interjected more information. So now with the whole calorie model, we are interjecting more information. We're interjecting nutrients. We're interjecting hormones. And that changes the effect calories have on your body. So just like the earth is flat paradigm, this is just like what we're in now. And we're evolving because we're interjecting new laws and new variables that totally change the system.
Yeah, I think that's super important. And it makes a lot of sense too, because when I look back at things, it's only so recently since we started counting calories or carrying, but it's not the calories that's a problem. And we could be eating excess calories, but it's the foods that we might be eating that's driving us to eat too much, or even our lifestyle that can dictate things. So like you said, as long as we're conscious of eating whole real foods, there's not much calories that we necessarily need to count. There's not much effort that we need to put into this area. We can put our efforts into something else, like making sure we're reading the ingredients, or get foods that don't even have ingredients lists, like broccoli or chicken or grass-fed beef. Right?
Yeah, and a great starting point is really simple. Answer 2 questions for yourself. Are you overweight or are you not? Okay, if you're really overweight right now, you're probably more carbohydrate sensitive. So you have to be eating more non-starchy carbohydrates, which are going to be your vegetables, your above ground vegetables, your broccoli, your spinach, your cauliflower, right? All of those good things, and less of the starchy carbohydrates. The starchy are going to be, your sweet potatoes, your yams, your tubers, your squash, your beets, those things. So we have our starchy and our non-starchy. If you're more overweight, guess what? You probably need more non-starchy carbohydrates because you're carbohydrate sensitive. We also have carbohydrates that are high glycemic and low glycemic. Those are going to be your carbs. The carbs that are higher glycemic break down into your blood sugar faster. They affect your blood sugar faster. That'll be any refined carbohydrate, any tropical fruits, any grain at all are going to be higher glycemic. So you want to stay away from those and do foods that are lower glycemic. So on the fruit side, your best options would be berries. Those would be your better option because they break down the sugar less. Now the next question is, look at your skin color. If you have darker skin, that means you evolved closer to the equator. If you evolve closer to the equator, well, guess what? You don't have as much winter, you don't have permafrost, and you have, more of an environment that allows vegetation to grow throughout the year. And so you're going to be able to eat more carbohydrate, maybe more tropical fruit, and you'll also have access to fish and good fats from coconut as well. So if you're evolved closer to the equator, darker skin, you probably can handle more carbohydrate as long as you're not overweight. If you evolve farther away from the equator, less sun, less UV rays, our skin becomes whiter. That means you had winter, that means you had permafrost. You didn't have access to vegetation as much because it froze all up. You're not going to find, up in Northern Europe in the winter months, from October to March or April, you're not going to find too much fruit available. You're going to find more meats. So that's where you're going to be eating more proteins and fats and probably less carbohydrates. So look at your skin and also look at your weight. That's a great indicator. If you have darker skin, probably more carbohydrates. Lighter skin, less carbohydrates. If you're overweight, that kind of trumps it all, and you'd probably go less carbohydrates, more in the non-starchy variety.
Yeah, I think that's a great starting point, and that was a great way to end things off today. For everybody out there, if you guys want to ask questions for our Q&A episodes, just go to beyondwellnessradio.com in our contact section. You can go ahead and throw in any questions that you have for us that you want answered, and we'll go ahead and put that on the podcast. For any other information, our transcriptions, show notes, anything that we mentioned here will be on beyondwellnessradio.com. So everybody have a good one.
Thanks. Have a good one.
Got a question for Dr. J? Go to beyondwellnessradio.com/question. Then tune in to hear the answer. Also, if you like the show, review us on iTunes. For more Beyond Wellness Radio, go to beyondwellnessradio.com.